Okay, just a little update on the 5-bit tool, PhiClub group cluster subs plus 1.0. Yeah, so I noticed this morning I was going through adding some of the people had suggested, and I saw the people had added them themselves. When you're the caretaker, even currently, I need more features like this, but you can see what other people have added. And I was just basically going through and confirming those by adding those people myself. They show up in the list. I can click on them and say add, and then they become full members. And it was kind of slow on the Ephilism group, which is getting big now. It was a lot faster last night on a similar sized group. It could be several things. It could be the load on YouTube. It could be there could even turn out to be some issues eventually, with the service. I'm using the free service from Google, but that shouldn't be an impact. That's just a matter of the amount of resources. Shouldn't affect the response time too much. Well, that's not true. There's an enterprise class that probably is more responsive. But there's various things I could do. It can also just be that the database is getting complicated and there's some gross inefficiencies. I know there's some inefficiencies there I intend to fix. So just so you all know, right now I'm going to go into no feature adding mode. I'm going to iron out any performance problems now that the thing is under load. I've got a way now to clone the database and scrub the database if I need to. If there's a problem, helps make that more secure. Plus I can debug these sophisticated things that happen in the deployment database that don't happen in my test database. And so yeah, I'll be working on that. I'm going to make it so that a couple people have volunteered to take over lists, so I'm going to work on that probably as well. That'll be the one feature I'll finish. Then there's some little glitches and bugs, and then that I want to look at. But I'll look at I'll start looking at the performance thing right away tonight at the same time to see if there is a performance issue. It's one thing to have to wait if YouTube is just being slow, but I don't want it to error out. I want it to behave intelligently, and there's things I can do. So I'm going to be working on that. I guess I'm fibbing a little. There's some features that are almost like bugs not having in terms of controlling these groups, and as an administrator seeing what's going on with groups and making sure the database doesn't get corrupted and everything. Basically, I have a brute force method to make this efficient again. You see, my groups are somewhat complicated and require a more complicated database retrieval than just a list of names or user objects. So, but what I will do is I'll generate such a list. When a person votes, I have a chance to go ahead and generate their list right then, and things like this, techniques like this, where we can have a cached thing. Also, eventually, if there was really a lot of users, just in general, you might get caching, so that if you look at a group 3 times in a 10-minute period, it might just give you the same page, even if somebody else has added the group. The tricky part of that, of course, is I have to make it where if you add someone to group, you got to see that right away. So this whole keeping up with the database thing is something you want to play with carefully. Anyway, thank you for those of you using the site, and especially anybody willing to take a group. There are going to be, structured conversation features and video playlists associated with groups and clusters, and in a way these things are shared subscriptions, and it's all very much an integral part of this structured conversation system, which I have fully designed in my head and made just about every part of it at some point. So I'm working in a particular direction. Thank you to those of you who find some of these things useful along the way. That, as I've said before, that's the order I'm doing them in. Things that I kind of like. I'm sick of the YouTube subscriptions. So yeah, I'll be working on some user features when I get a chance to, that'll make these more like subscriptions, with your own page where you can list people you want to keep track of, and bookmarks to groups, and your own lists of groups you basically quote unquote subscribe to. But the thing is, basically, when you identify a group, that is something that's public in my system. Who you follow becomes private again. I mean, there's various ways to have bookmarks or private pages that will allow you to follow. So it won't say who you've clicked on to see their recent activity. On the other hand, you can't have like a subs favorite hidden group either. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's like it's actually more privacy about what you watch, but there's less privacy about when you point the finger and identify some sort of a group as a classification. My hope is that people will create all kinds of groups, will share groups, and with the trust network approach, we'll have really kind of hyperdimensional groups of covering the whole spectrum of what we use groups for. And this will include being able to, as I've said before, claim your video on YouTube. So anyway, if there's some glitches or it's slow, feel free to leave comments here about it, or send emails to phividtool@gmail.com, or wait it out. So I don't actually know there's a problem. Everything worked for me. I just saw that the Epilist page was taking much longer to return than it was, for example, last night, but when the load on YouTube would have been relatively light. All right, cheers.